Am I the asshole for letting my daughter walk out with just 2 suitcases after the court took her away? If you had 30 seconds to decide whether you were about to lose your child forever and no one bothered to ask you what really happened, would you still believe the truth mattered? Because that's exactly how much time I had before my 14-year-old daughter was turned against me and removed from my custody based on a lie that started with fake nails and ended with 2 suitcases rolling out of my front door. My name is Mara. My daughter will be called Lily. And if you think this sounds dramatic, I promise you it felt worse living it. This story isn't about a single argument. It isn't about a bad day, a misunderstood sentence, or a teenage meltdown. It's about how fragile parenthood becomes when courts stop listening and children learn that survival sometimes means accusing the parent who says no. It's about how silence can be mistaken for guilt, how compliance can be mistaken for weakness, and how the truth can drown quietly while lies learn how to swim. When Lily was born, she came into the world screaming, her tiny fists clenched like she already knew life would be a fight. I remember holding her in the hospital, her hair damp, her cry cutting through the sterile room, and thinking, "You are mine. No matter what happens, I will protect you." For years, I believed that promise was enough. Her father, Cole, was charming in public, magnetic in small rooms, and unpredictable behind closed doors. The kind of man who could make strangers laugh in a grocery store line and make you feel invisible in your own kitchen. We had good moments, vacations, birthdays, lazy Sundays, but the tension was always there, like a storm you could smell before it hit. When the marriage collapsed, it didn't collapse quietly, it exploded. Lawyers got involved, accusations started flying, every conversation became evidence, every text became ammunition, every mistake became a strategy. By the time Lily was 13, she had learned how to read a room like a lawyer reads a contract. She knew which parent was in control of the narrative and which parent was in control of the rules. And rules, I learned, are easy to resent when you're 14. The divorce was so toxic that even the professionals assigned to protect my children kept quitting one by one. We went through 3 guardians ad litem. The first 2 asked to be removed, citing the conflict level as too extreme. One of them said during a call, "This case is consuming more emotional energy than we can ethically provide." I hung up and stared at the wall, thinking, if they can't handle this, how am I supposed to? When Lily was finally returned to my custody, the judge laid out a list of requirements that felt like a checklist for proving my humanity. Weekly therapy, public school, extracurricular activities, social time with friends, and the vaguest instruction of all, give her a normal teenage life again. I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Normal teenage life, as if normal could be ordered by a judge and delivered like a package. But I treated that order like scripture. I printed it, highlighted it, built my schedule around it, because I believed if I followed every rule perfectly, no one could take her from me again. Within days, Lily was enrolled in public school. She hated it at first. The hallways were loud, the kids were cliquey, the teachers felt indifferent. But slowly she found her rhythm. I drove 2 hours round trip every week for therapy, sometimes calculating whether I had enough gas to make it home. There were weeks I chose therapy over groceries, convincing myself we could live on pasta and canned soup for a few more days. I signed her up for drama club. I waited in parking lots with cold coffee, watching parents chat casually while I sat alone, documenting pickup times and attendance records like a private investigator. I rearranged my work schedule so she could have a part-time job. She liked the independence. She liked having her own money. She liked feeling older. She made friends. She laughed louder. She started dating. I watched her become a teenager again, and for a brief, dangerous moment, I thought we were healing. At night, I would sit on the couch scrolling through photos of her smiling with friends and feel something close to peace, something close to hope. But hope is dangerous when someone else benefits from your failure. I paid her phone bill, bought clothes, school supplies, personal items, everything a parent is supposed to provide, and quietly, obsessively, I documented everything. Receipts, attendance, therapy notes, conversations, screenshots, logs. Because Cole was doing the opposite of supporting reunification. Whenever Lily complained about chores or boundaries, he told her I was abusive and controlling. He told her the court was wrong to place her with me, that I was ruining her life, that I was strict, cold, unreasonable. He told her she shouldn't have a job, friends, or activities, the very things the judge required I provide. It created a psychological war zone in my living room. To her, I was the rule enforcer. To him, she was the rescued princess, and princesses don't like rules. I stayed silent. Every lawyer says the same thing. Don't react, stay calm, the truth will protect you. I believed them. Homecoming arrived, and I wanted Lily to feel like every other teenager in her school hallway, sparkly, excited, nervous, alive. I bought her shoes, paid for a haircut, and when Cole refused to help with a dress, I bought that too. She asked for fake nails. I said no. It was such a small thing, a trivial decision, the kind of boundary parents set every day without thinking, but we were stretched thin financially, and I still believed parents were allowed to say no. She rolled her eyes and walked away. I didn't think twice about it. The night of homecoming, she came home smiling, glitter in her hair, photos on her phone. She looked happy. She looked like a normal teenager. For the first time in months, I slept without anxiety. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Did you authorize this delivery charge? My stomach dropped instantly. I checked my account and saw multiple unauthorized charges, food deliveries, beauty store purchases, small digital transactions, small enough to hide, loud enough to tell a story. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the screen, feeling something between disbelief and grief. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted there to be a glitch, a mistake, a fraudster somewhere far away. I asked Lily calmly if she knew anything about it. She looked me straight in the eye and said no. I asked again. She said no again. Then I turned the phone toward her and showed her the statements. The silence was louder than any confession. I remember the silence after she stopped talking. It wasn't loud or explosive. It wasn't screaming or slamming doors. It was quieter than that. She just pulled away. After the debit card incident, Lily stopped meeting my eyes. She answered questions with one-word replies. She started spending more time in her room, headphones on, phone glued to her hand like it was a life raft. I knew she was talking to her father. I didn't need proof. I could feel it in the way her mood shifted after each call. Lighter, defiant, detached from me. Cole had always been good at that. He knew how to position himself as the safe harbor while quietly drilling holes in the boat I was trying to keep afloat. He would tell her things like, "You don't deserve to be controlled like that," or "If you were with me, you wouldn't have to deal with this," or "Your mom just wants power over you." He never said, "Your mom loves you." People think parental alienation is dramatic, like brainwashing, like a villain in a movie whispering lies into a child's ear. It's not like that. It's subtle. It's emotional. It's strategic. He didn't need to convince Lily I was evil. He just needed to convince her I was the obstacle to her happiness. And I made it easy. Because I enforced rules. Because I checked homework. Because I tracked therapy appointments. Because I said no when money was tight. Because I believed parenting meant guiding, not appeasing. Teenagers don't rebel against parents who say yes. They rebel against parents who say no. Cole knew that. I became a clerk of my own motherhood. Every ride to therapy I logged. Every school email I saved. Every receipt I scanned. Every conversation I summarized in notes. I hated doing it. It felt clinical, cold, unnatural. But in family court, love is not proven with hugs and bedtime stories. It is proven with timestamps and documentation. Some nights I would sit on my bed surrounded by binders and folders and think, is this what motherhood has become? Evidence? Lily saw the binders once and laughed. "Why are you writing everything down like I'm a criminal?" she asked. "I'm not writing about you," I said. "I'm protecting both of us." She didn't believe me. Teenagers rarely do. For a while, things seemed stable. She went to school, she went to therapy, she went to work. She hung out with friends. We ate dinner together sometimes, watched shows, argued about music. She was moody, sarcastic, distant, but that felt normal. That felt like teenagehood. I told myself the worst was behind us. That was my mistake. After the debit card confrontation, she locked herself in her room. I heard muffled voices through the door, her tone shifting from defensive to soft, from angry to reassured. She was talking to Cole. Then she called the guardian ad litem. I didn't know that at the time. I only found out later, when everything was already in motion. I went to bed that night thinking we'd revisit the debit card issue in therapy, thinking this would be one of those parenting moments we'd laugh about years later. I had no idea that conversation was being transformed into a legal weapon. I didn't hear Lily's version until court transcripts months later. In her version, I wasn't a stressed single mother confronting unauthorized charges. I was a tyrant. She said I told her she had to move out. She said I threatened to leave her at school. She said she felt unsafe in my house. She said I was emotionally abusive. The truth was messy and boring. Her version was dramatic and terrifying, and courts prefer terrifying stories to boring truths. The guardian ad litem didn't call me. They didn't email me. They didn't ask for bank records. They didn't ask for screenshots. They didn't ask for my documentation binders. They went to Lily's school and met with her alone. alone. No therapist present, no parent present, no corroboration. Just a teenager, a narrative, and a professional who didn't want to risk being blamed later. I imagine that meeting sometimes. I imagine Lily sitting in a school office chair, legs swinging, phone in her hand, rehearsing the story she had already told her father. I imagine the guardian ad litem nodding sympathetically, thinking they were rescuing a child. I imagine no one asking, "Can we verify this?" Because in family court, urgency often outruns verification. I found out about the emergency hearing through an email that felt like a punch to the throat. Emergency, immediate, urgent. Words designed to bypass reason. At the hearing, the courtroom felt cold and procedural, like a hospital corridor where people receive life-altering news every day. The guardian ad litem spoke first. They called me an unfit parent. No exhibits, no receipts, no therapy records, no witnesses. Just Lily's statements. Cole sat there, composed, concerned, the perfect father figure. I wanted to scream, "Where were you when I was driving 2 hours for therapy? Where were you when I was buying dresses and paying phone bills? Where were you when she needed someone to say no?" But family court is not a place for emotional truth. It is a place for strategic silence. Custody was transferred to Cole immediately. The gavel didn't slam dramatically. The judge didn't look at me with sympathy or disdain. They just moved on to the next case. My life shattered in under 10 minutes. People think losing custody is dramatic, like scenes in movies with crying parents and social workers carrying children out of houses. It's not like that. It's administrative. It's paperwork. It's calendar changes, and legal emails and quiet devastation. Lily started staying with Cole. She stopped texting me. Her social media filled with photos of a new life, smiling selfies, outings, captions about freedom. I stared at those photos like someone looking at vacation pictures from a place they used to live. Cole told me he would come with Lily to collect her belongings. I cleaned the house obsessively, like preparing for an inspection, not because I expected judgment, but because cleaning was something I could control. I folded laundry that wasn't hers. I wiped counters twice. I vacuumed rooms she no longer slept in. I found childhood drawings in a drawer, photos of her missing teeth, a stuffed animal she used to drag everywhere. I sat on the floor holding that stuffed animal and wondered how a life could split in half so quickly. What I didn't know, what I learned later, was that Lily had already packed. 2 suitcases sat in her room for days. She knew she was leaving before I did. She had rehearsed this exit. She had planned her departure while I was still hoping for reconciliation. That realization hurt more than the custody transfer, because it meant she had emotionally left before the court ever intervened. On the day they arrived, the house felt too quiet. I sat on the couch with my hands folded, like waiting for a verdict that had already been delivered. I imagined what I would say. "I love you. This isn't goodbye. You can always come home." But when the doorbell rang, every sentence evaporated. Cole stood in the doorway, confident, calm, victorious. Lily stood beside him with 2 suitcases. She wouldn't look at me. And in that moment, I realized the battle had never been about custody. It had been about narrative, and I had lost the story before I even knew I was being written out of it. The knock wasn't loud. It wasn't angry or rushed. It was polite, controlled, almost respectful. That made it worse. I had been sitting on the couch for nearly an hour, staring at the front door like it was a living thing. My hands were folded in my lap, fingers digging into my palms, trying to anchor myself to the present moment. The house felt too clean, too quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. When the doorbell rang, my heart dropped into my stomach. I stood up slowly, as if moving too fast might break whatever fragile version of reality I was still clinging to. I smoothed my shirt, pushed my hair behind my ear, and walked to the door like someone walking toward an execution they'd already been sentenced to. When I opened it, Cole was standing there. He looked calm. He always looked calm. That was part of his power. He could stand in the ruins of a family and look like the most reasonable person in the room. Lily stood beside him. 2 suitcases sat at her feet. They were medium-sized, black, practical. Nothing dramatic. No stickers, no personalization, just functional luggage for a functional exit. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes stayed on the ground, then flicked to her phone, back to the driveway. Anywhere but my face. "Hi," Cole said, his voice soft, almost sympathetic. "We're here to get her things." I nodded. My mouth opened, but no words came out. This was the moment I had rehearsed 100 times in my head, the speeches, the reassurances, the tears I promised myself I wouldn't show. But when your child stands in front of you with their life packed into 2 suitcases, language stops working the way it should. We walked down the hallway toward Lily's bedroom. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her room still looked like a teenager's room. Posters on the walls, a pile of clothes on the chair, books stacked on her desk, makeup scattered across the dresser. But it already felt abandoned, like a museum of someone who no longer existed here. Lily walked in first and grabbed the handles of the suitcases. She had packed them neatly, clothes folded, toiletries zipped into side pockets, shoes tucked into plastic bags. She had prepared for this. I had been hoping it wouldn't happen. I stood in the doorway, hands gripping the doorframe. "You can take the 2 suitcases you packed today," I said. The words came out flat, controlled, mechanical. I didn't say, "You can't have your things." I didn't say, "You'll never get them." I didn't say, "I'm keeping everything else." I was trying to prevent chaos, trying to follow court instructions, trying not to collapse in front of her. But sentences have afterlives, and this one would live a long time in other people's mouths. Cole looked at me, eyebrows raised, as if he were documenting a crime scene. Lily said nothing. She just lifted the suitcases and walked past me. Her shoulder brushed against my arm. I wanted to grab her. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to say everything I had ever written in those documentation binders, but never felt allowed to say out loud. Instead, I stepped aside, because in family court, every gesture can be weaponized. The hallway felt longer than it ever had. Each step of her suitcase's wheels echoed against the hardwood floor like punctuation marks on a sentence I didn't agree to write. Click, click, click. Cole walked behind her, hands in his pockets, as if this were just another Saturday errand. At the front door, Lily paused. For a moment, I thought she might turn around, say something. "Look at me." She didn't. She stepped outside. Cole held the door open for her, then turned to me. "She'll be with me for now," he said. "We'll follow the court order." For now. Like this was temporary. Like this wasn't a fracture that would change everything. Then he stepped out. The door closed. The sound was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was final. People think trauma is loud, screaming, crying, chaos. Sometimes it is just a door closing, the click of a latch, the quiet of an empty hallway, the echo of footsteps fading down a driveway. I stood there, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my back against the door, my knees pulled to my chest. I don't remember crying at first. I remember feeling hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left a body that still knew how to breathe. The house felt different, not quieter, emptier, like sound itself had moved out with her. I stayed there for a long time, minutes, hours, I don't know. Time doesn't behave normally when your child leaves. When I finally stood up, my legs felt numb. I walked back to her room and sat on her bed. Her pillows still smelled like her shampoo. Her blanket was tangled the way she always left it. A hair tie sat on her nightstand. I picked it up like it was evidence that she had been real, that she had been here, that this wasn't a dream. Then I did the strangest thing. I started packing, not to get rid of her things, not to erase her, to preserve her. I folded her clothes carefully, as if folded memories into boxes. I wrapped fragile items in tissue paper like they were heirlooms. I labeled boxes with her name in neat handwriting. Lily, books. Lily, clothes. Lily, school memories. It felt like archiving a life. I took photos of everything, logged every item, notified the proper channels that her belongings would be available at the next court-approved opportunity. I was still following the rules, even after the rules had taken her from me. I didn't know it at the time, but a story was already spreading, that I was controlling, that I withheld belongings, that I used property as leverage, that I was manipulative, that I was abusive. People love clean villains. They don't love complicated mothers in complicated systems. The truth, that I was a woman in shock trying to survive the moment her child walked out, was too boring, too nuanced, too human. So they chose the simpler story. The nights were the worst. Her room stayed dark, her laughter stayed absent, her footsteps never came down the hallway. Sometimes I would wake up at 2 a.m. thinking I heard her door open. It never did. I would check my phone for messages that weren't there. I would scroll through old photos until my chest ached. I kept thinking about all the things I had done right. The therapy drives, the school enrollments, the extracurricular activities, the documentation, the silence. I had followed every instruction, and still she left. Compliance did not protect me. Silence did not protect me. Love did not protect me. Weeks later, I sat in my kitchen staring at a coffee mug that had gone cold, and I realized something that changed how I saw everything. I hadn't lost custody in court. I had lost the narrative. By the time I was documenting receipts, Cole was documenting emotions. By the time I was saving emails, Lily was saving stories. By the time I was following rules, they were rewriting reality. And in family court, the first story told is often the one believed. Years from now, people will ask me how it felt. They'll ask if I regret anything, if I would have done something differently, if I still believe the truth matters. But in that moment, sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes labeled with my daughter's name, I only knew one thing. She didn't just walk out with 2 suitcases. She walked out with a version of me that the world would never question, and I was left alone with a truth that had nowhere to go. Time doesn't heal everything, but it changes the shape of the wound. In the weeks after Lily left, I learned how silence has texture. Mornings felt heavier without the sound of her alarm through the wall. Evenings felt hollow without the casual noise of her laughter drifting down the hallway. I stopped cooking full dinners because cooking for one felt like rehearsing a life I never asked for. Friends tried to help. They brought casseroles, offered coffee, sent messages that started with, "I can't imagine what you're going through." They were right. They couldn't imagine it. Because losing a child to death is tragic. Losing a child to paperwork is surreal. There was no funeral, no public mourning, no social permission to grieve. She was alive. She was just not mine anymore. I kept documenting, not because I believed it would bring her back, but because documentation had become muscle memory. Trauma rewires you into an archivist of pain. I logged attempts to contact her. I saved unanswered texts. I noted court dates and visitation clauses that never materialized. Somewhere in a filing cabinet, there's a timeline of my heartbreak written in bullet points. And that's what still terrifies me most, that my motherhood could be reduced to bullet points. Online, people talked, not directly to me, about me. Parents who had never stepped into a courtroom shared opinions. Strangers with no context decided who I was based on fragments of a story that was never mine to tell in full. They said things like, "Courts don't remove kids without reason. Kids don't lie about safety. There's always more to the story." There is always more to the story, but more does not always mean worse. Sometimes more means complicated. Sometimes more means tragic. Sometimes more means 2 truths colliding, and the system choosing the easier one. But nuance is not viral. Villains are. So I became one. Her room stayed exactly the same for months. I couldn't bring myself to change it. It felt like altering a crime scene, like erasing evidence that she had once lived here. Sometimes I would sit on her bed and scroll through old videos, her laughing, singing badly in the car, complaining about homework, rolling her eyes at my jokes. I watched those videos like someone watching footage of a city that no longer exists. She was still alive, but that version of us was gone. Eventually, I started therapy again, not for court, not for compliance, but for survival. My therapist asked me once, "What hurts the most?" I thought she meant the court decision, or the accusations, or the loneliness, but the answer surprised me. "What hurts the most," I said, "is that she thinks I abandoned her, when I was the one who stayed." Over time, I began to understand the system that had swallowed us. Family court is not designed to find truth. It is designed to manage risk. If a child says they feel unsafe, professionals act fast. If a parent says they feel misunderstood, professionals file paperwork. One is urgent, the other is inconvenient. The system is built to avoid tragedy headlines, not to preserve complicated relationships. And in that system, stories beat spreadsheets. Sometimes I imagine Lily at 25, sitting in an apartment somewhere, scrolling through old photos. Maybe she'll see pictures of us baking cookies, laughing in the kitchen, decorating a Christmas tree. Maybe she'll stumble across court documents she never read. Maybe she'll wonder what really happened. Teenagers believe what keeps them alive in the moment. Adults sometimes revisit what kept them alive and ask if it was true. I don't know which version of history she carries in her mind, but I know one day she may question it. If Lily ever asked me what happened, I would not hand her binders. I would not show her receipts. I would not play recordings. I would say this: I loved you. I set boundaries. You felt controlled. Someone told you that meant I was dangerous. You believed them. The system believed you. and I lost you. None of us were villains in our own minds, but the system needed one. People expect grief to be sad. They don't expect it to be angry. There is an anger that comes from realizing that compliance can be punished, that silence can be used against you, that truth can be drowned out by a well-timed accusation. I was angry at Cole. I was angry at the guardian ad litem. I was angry at the judge. I was angry at the system. But mostly I was angry at the myth that good behavior guarantees good outcomes. At some point, I had to learn how to live in a world where Lily was not part of my daily routine. I rearranged furniture. I took down posters. I turned her room into an office. The first time I moved her bed, I cried so hard I had to sit on the floor again. But life does not wait for grief to finish speaking. Bills still arrive, work still demands attention, time still moves forward, and so, reluctantly, I moved with it. People ask me now if I still believe the truth matters. They ask it with skepticism, like truth is a fairy tale adults grow out of. The answer is complicated. Truth did not save me in court. Truth did not keep my daughter in my house. Truth did not stop the door from closing. But truth is the only thing I have that wasn't taken. Here is the part people argue about. Here is the part people screenshot and debate in comment sections. Here is the part that makes strangers type paragraphs at 3 a.m. The day my daughter walked out with 2 suitcases, I learned something no parenting book, no lawyer, and no judge ever told me. In family court, truth is not a shield. It is a fragile glass ornament that shatters when it hits urgency, fear, and narrative. People think justice is about facts, but justice is often about timing, tone, and who speaks first. A teenager said she was afraid. A system believed her. A father benefited. A mother lost everything, and no one stopped to ask what really happened. So here is the moral, and it is not comforting. You can follow every rule and still lose. You can stay silent and still be erased. You can love perfectly and still be painted as the villain. But truth still matters. Not because courts care, not because strangers will believe you, not because social media will be fair. Truth matters because one day your child might grow up and ask what really happened, and when that day comes, you will want to know that you didn't become the lie just to survive the story. My daughter walked out with 2 suitcases, but she also walked out with a story that everyone believed, and I stayed behind with a truth that no one asked for, except maybe her future self. And if she ever asks, I will tell her everything. Not to win, not to blame, not to reopen wounds, but because love, real love, deserves the truth, even when the truth loses in court.